The alien prisoner sat inside the cold metal cell, his breathing shallow and broken, his eyes wide with terror as he stared at the shadows moving outside the bars. His scales were burned, his armor shattered, but it was not the pain of battle that made him tremble. It was fear, a fear so deep that even the soldiers guarding him could feel it in the air. This was not the fear of death, it was something far worse. The alien whispered words in his own language, repeating them again and again like a curse. And when the human translator finally caught the meaning, even he felt his chest tighten. The alien kept saying, "They don't forgive. They hunt. They hunt us all." The human guards looked at each other, confused, but there was no confusion in the prisoner's eyes. He had seen something, something that made his very soul shake. In the silence of that cell, his trembling voice carried a warning that echoed like thunder in the minds of all who heard it. It began many years ago, long before this alien was captured, long before the stars had burned with war. The galaxy had known countless conflicts, species fighting over land, resources, and pride. Wars would come and go, empires would rise and fall, but there was always a rhythm to it, a kind of balance. Even when a species lost, they would surrender, sign treaties, and eventually recover. That was the natural way of things among the stars. But then the aliens made a mistake that changed everything. They attacked Earth. They thought it would be easy. Humans were new to the galaxy, inexperienced, fragile, a small world that had only just begun to touch the stars. The alien empire thought it would take a single swift strike to bring them under control. But they were wrong. The prisoner remembered the stories passed down from his own people. They had laughed at humans at first. They thought humans were too emotional, too violent, too reckless. They called them primitive and weak. But when the war began, something unexpected happened. Humans did not surrender. Even when their cities burned and their skies turned red, they fought. They fought with fury, with rage, and with a determination that seemed unnatural. The aliens destroyed Earth's fleets, but the humans kept coming. They bombed human colonies, but survivors turned the ruins into fortresses. Every loss only made the humans angrier, every wound only made them stronger. The prisoner's voice shook as he recalled the words of his commanders, words he wished he had never heard. Do not give humans a reason to hate you, because if you do, they will never stop. Inside the cell, the human commander listened, quietly, his face unreadable, but his soldiers leaned closer, curious and unsettled. The alien continued to speak, his words spilling like poison into the air. You don't understand, he said, his voice cracking. Humans are not like us. When we lose a battle, we retreat, we make peace, we rebuild. But humans, no. They remember. They mark every scar, every name, every city that fell. They do not forgive. They do not forget. They hunt. The cell went quiet, only the hum of the ship filling the silence. But the alien's words stayed heavy in the minds of all who heard them. The alien described how his people once celebrated victory over humans. They thought the war was finished, that humans would fade like so many other defeated races. For a time, it seemed true. The humans went quiet, their fleets broken, their worlds scarred. The alien empire rejoiced, declaring triumph across the stars. But years later, the first whispers began. Alien outposts far from Earth started disappearing. Patrol ships sent into human territory never returned. At first, no one believed it. Then came the wreckage, drifting through space, marked with human weapons, marked with human vengeance. Slowly, a shadow began to spread through the empire. The humans were not gone. They were waiting. They were hunting. The prisoner's voice rose as if he were reliving the nightmare. We thought we were the hunters, he said, his eyes wet with fear. But it was them all along. They followed us, they tracked us, they studied us. We thought we had crushed them, but they were learning. They watched our tactics, they mapped our supply lines, they understood our weaknesses. And then, they came back. His body shivered, as though the memory itself burned his skin. They did not come like an army, not at first. They came like predators, silent, patient, relentless. One by one, our colonies went dark. One by one, our fleets were torn apart. Humans do not fight wars the way others do. They fight like hunters, and once they mark you, there is no escape. The human commander leaned forward now, his expression sharp, his voice low. "Why are you telling us this?" The alien looked at him with wide, hopeless eyes. "Because you need to know," he whispered, "because the hunt never ends. My people tried to beg for peace, but by then it was too late. Humans had lost too much, bled too much, suffered too much. There was no forgiveness left in them, only the hunt remained. You don't understand. Once humans decide you are their prey, time does not matter. They will wait years, decades, even centuries, and they will come for you. They never stop. They never forget." Silence filled the room. Even the steady hum of the ship seemed distant, now. The human soldiers shifted uncomfortably, some exchanging nervous glances. They had fought many battles, seen many enemies, but the way this alien spoke was different. It was not the arrogance of a defeated foe, nor the lies of a trickster. It was raw fear, the kind that cannot be faked. The alien's body trembled as if he were still on the battlefield, still hearing the screams of his comrades as human ships fell upon them like wolves upon cornered prey. He pressed his claws to his face and whispered again, "They don't forgive. They hunt. They hunt us all." And in that moment, everyone in that room realized something. The galaxy had many species, many empires, many warriors. But there was only one species that carried this kind of legend, only one whose very name was spoken in whispers across the stars. The humans, hunters of the unforgiven, predators of the endless war. And if the alien's warning was true, then this story was far from over. The alien's warning was not just a mad whisper of a broken prisoner, it was a seed of fear planted in the minds of all who listened, and to understand why those words carried such weight, one had to look back to the very beginning, to the war that the galaxy itself tried to forget, the war that gave birth to the legend of the hunters. In the early days, humanity was still young among the stars, their ships smaller, their technology weaker, their fleets spread thin and fragile. Yet, they carried something no empire truly understood, something no weapon could measure, a fire that lived inside them. When the alien empire first turned its attention toward Earth, they did not see this fire. They saw only a small blue planet, rich in resources and vulnerable in defense, a world that could be taken as easily as stepping on an insect. And so they came, swift and merciless, expecting surrender, expecting silence. The skies of Earth burned as alien fleets rained destruction. Cities turned to rubble. Oceans boiled with fire, and humanity watched their world collapse under the weight of an enemy they could barely comprehend. Many species before had surrendered at such a sight. Many had bowed to the inevitable, but humanity did not bow. They screamed, they fought, and they swore vengeance with every breath that remained. The first battles were brutal and hopeless. Human ships outgunned and shattered, soldiers forced into desperate defenses on colonies across the solar system. Yet even as they fell, they learned, they adapted, they refused to break. An alien commander once boasted that humanity would be erased in a single cycle, that their name would vanish before the next generation was born. But those words soon turned bitter in his mouth. Each time the humans lost, they came back sharper. Each time a city fell, another rose with stronger walls. Each time a fleet burned, another fleet emerged with new tactics. The galaxy had seen wars before, but never like this. never a species that treated war not as a temporary disaster but as a permanent memory etched into their blood, carried in their very breath. The alien empire began to realize too late that this was no ordinary conquest. This was the forging of something far more dangerous. The forgotten battle that the prisoner spoke of was not a single fight, but a storm of years, a storm that raged across space as humans pushed back against impossible odds. Their enemies struck with overwhelming numbers, but the humans fought with something far greater, an unshakable will, a refusal to ever surrender. When alien bombs fell on human cities, survivors clawed through the ruins to rebuild. When fleets were destroyed, pilots volunteered again. When soldiers were cut down, their brothers and sisters picked up their weapons. Loss did not weaken humanity. It sharpened them, and soon the galaxy began to whisper that humans were different, dangerous, unyielding. Other empires watched in silence, expecting humanity to break, but instead they witnessed a strange transformation, the weak newcomers of the stars becoming predators born of pain. And then came the day that changed everything, a day the aliens had hoped would end the war forever, a battle that would crush Earth itself. The alien empire gathered its largest fleet, a force so massive that even the stars seemed to dim in its presence, and they hurled it at humanity's homeworld. For 3 days and nights, Earth burned under the storm. Cities shattered, oceans churned, the sky filled with fire, yet even then the humans would not surrender. Civilians took up arms, old soldiers returned to the fight, entire generations stood together as one. The aliens won the battle. Yes, they claimed their victory. But it was a hollow victory. They had taken Earth, but in doing so, they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. They had given humanity a wound so deep it would never heal, and from that wound grew a hunger for vengeance that would outlive centuries. The forgotten battle ended with Earth in ruins, millions dead, humanity scattered, and the alien empire celebrating what they thought was the end of their enemy. But they did not understand what they had created. They believed that time would erase human rage, that suffering would turn into surrender, that humanity would accept its place among the conquered. But they were wrong. Humans did not forget. They did not forgive. And as the years passed, they rebuilt in silence, watching, learning, preparing. The aliens looked away, certain of their dominance, blind to the storm rising in the shadows. The prisoner's voice trembled as he remembered the stories passed through his people, how the laughter of victory slowly turned into unease, how whispers began to spread of human survivors striking in the dark. At first it was small, raids on supply lines, missing patrols, unexplained sabotage, but with each act the pattern grew clearer. Humanity was not gone. Humanity was hunting. Colonies that once belonged to the alien empire began to vanish. Fleets disappeared into empty space, and rumors spread of human ships moving like ghosts, striking without warning, then vanishing without a trace. The galaxy began to whisper again, this time not in laughter but in fear, because the humans who had been broken were no longer fighting for survival, they were fighting for vengeance, and vengeance had no end. That is why the battle was called Forgotten, not because it was erased, but because the alien empire tried to bury it, tried to silence the memory of the day they struck Earth, because to remember was to face the truth of what they had unleashed. The prisoner knew this truth too well. He had seen the aftermath. He had seen what happened to those who thought humans could be defeated. He told his captors that the galaxy itself should fear the day humanity first tasted true loss, because that loss forged them into something relentless, something eternal. Humans could forgive mistakes. They could forgive insults, but they could not forgive the destruction of their home, the slaughter of their people, the burning of their skies, and for that, they would never stop hunting. And so the legend began to spread, first in whispers among soldiers, then in fearful warnings spoken by traders and travelers, until even the rulers of distant empires heard it in their halls. The legend of a people who do not forget, who do not forgive, who turn every wound into fuel for the hunt. The alien empire tried to silence it, tried to call it lies, but the evidence kept growing, and soon the truth could no longer be denied. Humanity was coming back, stronger, sharper, more united than ever before, and the galaxy had no idea how to stop them. The forgotten battle was not the end. It was the beginning, the moment when humanity changed forever, the moment when the hunters were born. And as the prisoner finished his story, his voice shaking with the weight of memory, the human commander realized that this was not history alone. It was a warning that what had begun in fire and blood so many years ago was still alive, still burning, and that the hunt was far from over. The galaxy thought humanity had been broken after the Great War and the burning of Earth, but they were wrong, terribly wrong, because what the galaxy did not understand was that humans did not see war as an end, but as the beginning of something greater, something darker. And it was in the silence after the forgotten battle that the first hunt began. For years, the alien empire believed they had won. Their fleets patrolled proudly. Their colonies thrived on the resources stolen from Earth, and their commanders mocked the memory of humans as a failed species who had tried to resist the inevitable. Yet in the shadows of space, far beyond their borders, humanity was not dead. Humanity was not defeated. Humanity was watching. Scattered survivors rebuilt hidden stations in asteroid belts, underground bunkers on ruined colonies, and secret shipyards deep in the void. Every scar of the old war became a forge. Every wound became a vow, and slowly, quietly, the hunters began to prepare. The prisoner's voice shook as he recalled the first whispers of dread among his people, because it did not begin with a great battle or a massive fleet. It began with silence. Outposts along the frontier stopped sending reports. Patrol ships vanished without distress calls. Mining stations went dark. At first, commanders dismissed it as accidents, mechanical failures, perhaps even pirates, but soon the evidence became undeniable. Wreckage was found drifting in the void, not just destroyed but dismantled with precision, every strike deliberate, every move calculated. And on that wreckage were marks that no one could mistake, marks of human weapons, marks of human hands. The humans had returned. They did not return like others. No grand declarations, no demands for surrender, no open battlefields. They returned like predators stalking prey, patient, quiet, and merciless. They studied the alien fleets, learned their patrol routes, mapped their weak points, and struck only when the odds were certain. An alien convoy of 20 ships might disappear in the night with only fragments left behind, while a garrison on a distant moon would awaken to find its defenses sabotaged and its commanders assassinated. The humans were not fighting a war, they were conducting a hunt, and the prey was the very empire that once thought itself the master of the stars. Human fleets were small at first, ragged survivors with patched ships and improvised weapons, but every victory gave them more. They captured alien vessels, stripped them for parts, and turned the technology of their enemies against them. Every destroyed convoy gave them resources, every defeated outpost gave them intelligence, and with each step, their power grew. But what made them truly terrifying was not their ships or weapons. It was their memory, their patience, their refusal to let go of the past. They remembered every city that burned, every colony that fell, every family torn apart, and they carried those memories into battle like blades sharper than steel. Soon the alien empire realized that they were no longer the hunters, but the hunted. They tightened patrols, built stronger defenses, and sent larger fleets to protect their supply lines, but the humans adapted, always adapting, always learning. If fleets grew larger, the humans struck where they were weakest. If defenses thickened, the humans cut supply routes until the garrisons starved. If commanders changed strategies, the humans learned and countered faster than any enemy they had faced before. It was not war as the galaxy knew it. It was something new, something terrifying. Because the humans had no interest in treaties, no interest in peace, no interest in surrender. They had one goal: to hunt down every enemy who had spilled their blood, and nothing else mattered. The prisoner told of the first great strike that made the galaxy shiver. The attack on Valor Station, one of the alien empire's proudest military hubs. It was said to be impenetrable, shielded by asteroid fields and defended by entire fleets. But one night the humans came. No one knows how they entered, no one knows how they slipped past the defenses, but when dawn came, the station was gone, reduced to wreckage scattered across space, every defense burned, every ship destroyed. Survivors spoke of shadows moving in the dark, of human ships appearing without warning, striking with deadly precision, and vanishing before reinforcements could respond. It was then the whispers began to spread among the alien soldiers. Whispers that turned into fear. Fear that turned into terror. Because they began to believe that the humans could not be stopped, that no wall, no fleet, no fortress could save them. The first hunt was not just about survival, it was about message. Humanity wanted the galaxy to remember what they had done, wanted their enemies to understand that every act of violence against Earth had been carved into human memory, and that one by one the hunters would return to collect their vengeance. Traders began to speak of ghost fleets drifting through the void, of human war songs carried through the radio silence before attacks, of soldiers who swore they could feel eyes watching them in the dark between stars. The galaxy did not laugh at humans anymore. The galaxy whispered their name with dread. The prisoner closed his eyes as he spoke of those days, as if seeing again the way fear spread through his people like a disease. Soldiers who once boasted of easy victories now shivered at the thought of being sent to the frontier. Colonies that once thrived under the Empire's control began to live in constant fear of sudden attack, and commanders who once mocked humanity began to lose sleep at night. They knew the humans were out there, they knew the humans were hunting, but they never knew where or when the next strike would come. That was the true terror of the first hunt, the silence before the strike, the knowledge that the hunters were already watching, already waiting, and there was no escape. And so the legend of humanity grew, not because of great battles, but because of fear, because of the slow and steady hunt that bled the Empire piece by piece, leaving scars deeper than any war before. The prisoner whispered the final words with trembling lips, words that chilled even the hardened human soldiers listening to him. We thought the war had ended, but the truth is the war never ended, because humans do not forgive. They do not stop, they hunt. And once they begin the hunt, there is no end. The galaxy had begun to whisper the name of humanity in fear. But whispers alone could not capture the true terror that had spread through the alien empires, because what humans had created was not a fleet or a weapon. It was a legend, a shadow, that stretched across the stars, a presence that could strike anywhere and vanish before anyone knew it, and the silent fear that followed was stronger than any army. After the first hunt, alien commanders no longer boasted of victories, governors of colonies no longer slept peacefully, and soldiers who had once marched proudly into battle now trembled at the thought of a human ship appearing on the horizon. The silence was deafening, the emptiness of space a constant reminder that humanity could strike at any time, from any place, and without warning. Even the most powerful fleets hesitated to patrol the outer borders. Even the strongest star systems increased defenses, not to attack, but simply to survive the unknown predator lurking somewhere in the void. The alien markets and taverns became places of hushed conversation, where merchants and travelers spoke in cautious tones, sharing stories of encounters that no one dared speak openly about. Tales circulated of entire colonies disappearing overnight, of fleets found abandoned and destroyed with surgical precision, of ghostly ships that appeared like shadows between stars and left only wreckage behind. Every story added to the growing legend of humans, and every legend made even the bravest aliens pause before leaving their homes. Some claimed humans had learned to travel faster than any known speed, others whispered that they could appear anywhere in the galaxy instantly, and some even suggested that humans had learned to read minds, to know their enemies before the enemy, even knew themselves. Whether true or not, these stories spread like fire, feeding the silent fear that had begun to take root in every corner of the galaxy. Governments called emergency councils, convened secret meetings, and debated strategies to face the human threat, but every plan seemed inadequate. They had fought wars before, they had destroyed civilizations, they had conquered entire star systems, but humans were different. They did not follow the expected patterns, they did not surrender, they did not negotiate, and most terrifying of all, they never forgot. Every battle fought against humans, every city destroyed, every family lost, became a permanent memory etched into human history, a memory that fueled the hunt and drove them to return stronger, faster, and more precise. The prisoner had tried to warn them, to explain what had happened during the first hunt, but even then many dismissed it as exaggeration, myth, or fear, speaking louder than fact. It was only when the evidence began to pile up, when fleets vanished and colonies were reduced to rubble, that the empires understood that the silent fear was real and unstoppable. Even within the alien military, morale began to crumble. Young soldiers, raised to believe in the invincibility of their fleets, began to doubt themselves. Veterans, who had survived countless battles and lived through countless campaigns, began to lose sleep at night, haunted by the memory of the first hunt and the knowledge that humans could strike anywhere, anytime. Commands were given in hushed tones, fleets were deployed cautiously, patrols doubled, and still the fear persisted. It was not just a fear of death, it was a fear of inevitability, a recognition that humans were not merely another species to be defeated, but a force of nature that would not stop, that would never forgive, that would hunt without end. The prisoner spoke of the Alien Council, of meetings held in the deepest chambers of the Empire where leaders argued and plotted and yet could find no solution. They discussed alliances, treaties, even surrender, but every idea seemed futile. The humans did not play by the rules of diplomacy or war, and no weapon, no fleet of fleets could guarantee safety against a species that had mastered patience, memory, and precision. The silent fear grew because the humans did not announce themselves, did not send messages, did not leave warnings. They simply appeared, struck, and vanished, leaving behind only whispers and the knowledge that they were coming again. Every empire in the galaxy had learned the same lesson. To underestimate humans was to invite destruction. To face them without respect was to invite death. And to hope they would forgive was to be naive beyond measure. Traders told stories of void, stations where humans had appeared, taken only what they needed, left nothing but fear, and vanished before anyone could respond. Pilots spoke of ships moving like shadows, striking with perfect coordination, and yet returning to unseen bases far beyond known space. Even spies reported that humans seemed to know every strategy before it was executed, every trap before it was set, and every fleet movement before it was launched. Whether this was intelligence, instinct, or something else entirely, no one could say. But it reinforced the legend that humans were predators born of vengeance, and every whisper about them strengthened the silent fear that had gripped the galaxy. And yet, humans were not everywhere at once. They did not strike all systems simultaneously, which made the fear even more potent. Their attacks were random, unpredictable, impossible to anticipate. One system might be untouched for decades, while another would vanish in a single night. This inconsistency created paranoia, distrust among allies, and tension within empires, because no one could say where the hunt would strike next. The silent fear became a living thing, feeding on rumors, growing in strength with every new story, and spreading faster than fleets or weapons ever could. The prisoner had seen it in the eyes of alien soldiers, felt it in the halls of command, and now, even in captivity, it haunted him. The most terrifying part, the prisoner said, was that humans did not need reason to hunt. They did not need strategy, beyond the memory of wrongs done to them, and they did not stop to negotiate. Every loss, every insult, every act of violence against their kind was stored in their memory and transformed into fuel for the hunt. Aliens who thought they had survived. A human attack often lived only to experience the next one because humans never forgot and they never forgave. It was this unrelenting persistence that created the silent fear, because no one could truly know where the hunters would appear next, and no one could prepare for the weight of centuries of human memory brought to bear against them. And so, the galaxy waited, trembling in the quiet between stars, knowing that the humans could strike at any moment, that the hunters were out there, watching, and that there was no escape. Every story, every rumor, every shattered fleet and vanished colony only added to the legend and to the fear, until humans became more than a species, more than a civilization, more than a memory of war. They became an idea, a shadow that stretched. Across space, a name whispered in terror in markets, starports, and council chambers. The silent fear was no longer just a feeling, it was a reality, a force that shaped every decision, every fleet movement, every plan, and every heartbeat across the galaxy. And the prisoner finished his recounting with trembling lips. They do not forgive, they do not forget, and even when you cannot see them, even when their ships are far away, you can feel it. The silent fear. It is coming, always coming, and there is no stopping it. The alien empire had grown restless, tension thickening the air of every council chamber, every military command center, every distant colony, because the humans were no longer a distant threat. They were a constant shadow over the galaxy, a force that could not be predicted, bargained with, or defeated by ordinary means, and so the alien leaders convened in secret, calling a council that few had ever seen, a gathering of the most powerful minds in the empire to decide the fate of all who lived under their rule. The chamber was vast and cold, its walls lined with holographic displays of star systems, fleets, and colonies, each flickering with warnings and lost signals, each a reminder of the humans' relentless hunt. The council members argued endlessly, their voices rising and falling in frustration and fear because no plan seemed sufficient, no strategy guaranteed survival, and every moment they delayed, the humans drew closer. Some believed in negotiation, in offering peace, in surrendering. What the humans demanded, thinking perhaps a path of compromise could end the hunt before it reached their doors. Others scoffed at this, claiming humans were beyond reason, beyond mercy, a species forged by suffering and vengeance, and that any attempt at diplomacy would only show weakness and invite annihilation. The prisoner spoke quietly of those meetings, remembering the words of alien leaders who had tried to understand humans, who had studied their history, their wars, their culture, and yet could find no answer. They marveled at the persistence of humanity, at their ability to endure loss, at their strange combination of intelligence and raw emotion, and they feared what they could not comprehend. Reports were shown of colonies disappearing without warning, of entire fleets dismantled with precision, of survivors who swore they could hear human ships moving silently in the void, yet no one could intercept them. One counselor, older than most, argued that humans did not fight like other species, that they did not rely on overwhelming firepower or brute force, but on patience, on memory, on vengeance, carried like a weapon sharper than any laser. He warned that the galaxy underestimated the humans at its own peril, that the hunters had grown stronger with every act of destruction they had endured, and that soon no empire, no fleet, no defense could stop them. His words were met with murmurs of fear and disbelief, but the council knew the truth could not be denied. Some argued for unity among alien empires, proposing alliances that had never existed before, combining fleets, resources, and intelligence, in an attempt to stop the humans before they struck again. Others opposed this, claiming that fear would fracture alliances, that no species could truly trust another when the humans were hunting, that cooperation would come too late, and that every delay meant more colonies lost, more fleets destroyed, more lives claimed in silence. The prisoner remembered the tension in the room, the way even the strongest generals and leaders could not hide their unease, because they knew that humans were not just fighting battles, they were sending a message, a warning that even the mightiest could fall, that the hunt would continue until every wrong had been repaid. Discussions went on for cycles, days passing without decision, as if the council itself was paralyzed by the presence of a predator unseen. And in those moments, the humans became not just hunters, but a shadow over every thought, every plan, every hope of the alien leaders. The prisoner spoke of the secret missions that were sent from the council, desperate attempts to locate hidden human bases, to intercept human fleets before they could strike, to gather intelligence and understand the patterns of the hunt. All failed. Spies vanished without trace, fleets were ambushed and destroyed, communications intercepted only to reveal empty systems and wreckage. The humans were always one step ahead, always silent, always patient, and the council slowly realized that their enemy was unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. No attack was random, no strike careless. Every human action was precise, calculated, and fueled by centuries of memory and loss. The council began to fear that no strategy could match the humans' relentless will, and with that fear came disagreement, paralysis, and the growing realization that the empire itself was vulnerable. One of the younger leaders, filled with arrogance and confidence, proposed a bold offensive, a plan to strike at the human survivors directly, to destroy their hidden stations and cripple their fledgling fleets before they could regroup. The older counselors shook their heads, warning that such action would only provoke the humans, only accelerate the hunt, only deepen the vengeance that had already begun. The prisoner remembered the argument vividly, how voices rose and fell. In anger, how accusations of cowardice and foolishness were hurled, how fear battled pride within the hearts of the leaders. They could not agree because the humans had changed the rules of war, had rewritten the understanding of power and survival, and no one could say with certainty what would happen if they struck first or if they waited. As the council debated, messages arrived from distant colonies, each bringing new tales of human attacks, each reinforcing the legend that the prisoner had been trying to convey. Colonies that had thought themselves safe were destroyed overnight. Patrol fleets went missing without trace, and survivors spoke of human ships appearing in numbers too small to be detected, yet powerful enough to destroy entire stations. The humans were learning, adapting, evolving with every act of the hunt, and the council realized that their hesitation, their indecision, their endless debate was costing lives and colonies at an ever-increasing rate. Fear grew like a living thing, creeping into every mind, settling in the stomachs of soldiers, tightening the grip of commanders, and seeping into the fabric of the empire itself. Some counselors spoke of surrender, offering planets, resources, and technology in exchange for peace. But the prisoner remembered how quickly those proposals were shot down. For even the youngest among them understood the truth the humans had already proven. Humans do not forgive, they do not forget, and they never stop hunting. No bribe, no treaty, no surrender could halt the momentum of their vengeance. And to attempt it was to invite destruction. The council chambers echoed with arguments, shouting, and silence all at once, as if the empire itself struggled to comprehend the unstoppable force they faced. And while the leaders debated, the humans did not wait, did not pause, did not hesitate. The hunt continued, moving silently, patiently, leaving nothing behind but fear, and the reminder that the galaxy was no longer safe for those who had crossed them. By the end of the council, no agreement had been reached. Some leaders left with fear, some with anger, some with despair, but all with the understanding that humanity had become something more than a species, something that no plan, no fleet, no weapon could truly confront. The prisoner spoke of the dread that lingered long after the council dispersed, the knowledge that every moment wasted gave humans more time to grow stronger, more prepared, more patient, and that the hunt would not pause, would not rest, would not forgive. The council had tried to act as rulers, as leaders, as masters of their domain, but the humans had forced them to realize that the hunters were now the true masters of fate in the galaxy. The chamber fell silent, the flickering lights casting shadows across faces etched with fear, because in that silence, all who had attended understood one simple, terrifying truth. The humans would return, and when they did, no empire, no council, no fleet would be safe from their wrath. The galaxy had begun to understand that humans were different, that no other species remembered loss like they did, and that memory itself had become their deadliest weapon. Because while alien empires rebuilt, adapted, and moved on, humans carried the scars of war like a fire burning inside their souls, and that fire could not be extinguished, could not be ignored, and could not be reasoned with. The prisoner remembered watching human survivors rebuild from ruins, from scorched cities, from shattered fleets, and realizing that each act of reconstruction was not simply survival. It was preparation. It was planning. It was laying the foundation for the hunt that would follow. They remembered every attack, every betrayal, every city lost, every life taken, and they taught their children the names, the faces, the events, and the strategies that had been used against them, ensuring that no wrong would ever be forgotten. In the alien mind, memory was a record, a collection of data, something that could fade or be rewritten over time. For humans, memory was a weapon, a compass, a guide, and the prisoner knew that once a human set their mind to vengeance, it became unstoppable. Every generation of humans grew up learning the stories of loss and survival, of planets destroyed and families torn apart, and these stories were not tales of despair. They were lessons, blueprints for the hunt, and the prisoner could see how even young children understood that the galaxy was not safe, that patience was a strength, and that revenge could be carried across decades and even centuries if necessary. The aliens had laughed at this once, thinking that children's stories were harmless, that memory faded over time, but they had been wrong, catastrophically wrong. Humans did not forget. Humans did not forgive, and humans did not rest. And the prisoner knew that this long memory made them uniquely dangerous, far beyond the comprehension of any empire that believed in short wars and quick victories. When a human fleet struck an alien outpost, it was not only a tactical attack, it was the culmination of generations of planning, observation, learning, and remembering, and every move was informed by history, by every slight, every loss, every injustice that had ever been inflicted upon them. The prisoner recounted how human survivors in the years after the war did not waste time rebuilding only their technology. They rebuilt their minds, their strategies, and their understanding of the galaxy itself. They studied alien tactics, learned alien languages, memorized star maps, and analyzed the strengths and weaknesses of every species that had attacked them. Each human scholar, each commander, each soldier became a living archive, carrying the lessons of the past into every future battle. This made them unpredictable and nearly impossible to counter, because no plan that had worked in the past against other species worked against humans, who adapted, remembered, and improved continuously. Alien commanders began to fear not only human ships, but human thought, human ingenuity, human patience, because they realized that the humans' long memory meant they could strike in ways no one anticipated, at times no one expected, and with precision that seemed almost supernatural. In the alien empire, the prisoner explained, this concept was terrifying. Empires could rebuild cities, fleets, and armies, but they could not erase the memory of what humans had endured. Their leaders tried to convince themselves that humans would tire, that their vengeance would fade, that time would weaken their desire for justice. But the prisoner had seen the truth. Humans measured time differently, centuries of waiting, of planning, of perfecting the hunt, were nothing to them. The longer an empire ignored their wrongs, the sharper the humans became, the more precise their strikes, and the more inevitable the reckoning. A human's patience was a predator lying in wait, and the prisoner had witnessed fleets destroyed not because the humans were stronger, but because the humans remembered, and they applied that memory to every strike, every ambush, every calculated attack. He spoke of human societies that maintained archives of every conflict, every battle, every act of aggression by alien empires, and how these archives were studied not as history, but as tools of war. Every young cadet learned not just the names of fallen cities or destroyed colonies, but the lessons those tragedies taught, the tactics that worked, the mistakes to avoid, and the strategies that could be turned against the oppressors. In Alien, culture's history was often a record of pride and failure, easily dismissed or forgotten, but in human culture it was alive, dynamic, and deadly, and the prisoners shivered remembering how it empowered them. Aliens who had fought humans often reported that no matter how many victories they achieved, it never seemed to slow the humans, because the humans learned, remembered, and returned, carrying every loss with them into the next encounter. The prisoner's voice became quieter, almost reverent, as he described human commanders who were said to carry the memories of multiple generations. Leaders who could recount wars fought before their birth, who could predict enemy behavior by recalling how past mistakes had been made, and who could turn history into a weapon. Entire fleets were commanded not by just technology, but by strategy informed by centuries of observation, teaching, and memory, and the aliens soon realized that no conventional attack could succeed against an opponent who never forgot. He explained how even when humans were forced into hiding, scattered across the galaxy, or reduced to a fraction of their former numbers, their long memory ensured that nothing was lost, nothing forgotten, and nothing forgiven. Every wrong done to them became fuel for the hunt, and every victory achieved against them became motivation to fight harder, smarter, and more ruthlessly. The prisoner remembered telling the human's story to other alien captives, and how they listened in disbelief because they had never experienced a species that treated memory as a weapon, as a guide, as a force more powerful than fleets, more deadly than technology, and more inevitable than death itself. The human's long memory made every encounter unpredictable, every strike terrifying, and every empire aware that survival required constant vigilance, constant adaptation, and even then, it might not be enough. The aliens who had fought humans began to whisper that they could feel the weight of centuries in human eyes, that even the youngest soldiers carried the legacy of their ancestors, and that the galaxy itself had become a place of fear because humans remembered, and they would not forgive. And so the prisoner concluded with a shiver, his voice almost breaking, telling the humans' secret. It was not their ships, their weapons, or even their numbers that made them unstoppable. It was their memory. The ability to remember every injustice, every battle, every loss, and to turn that memory into strategy, patience, and vengeance, created a force no empire could withstand. Long after empires thought they had rebuilt, long after fleets thought they had recovered, the humans would strike again, guided by centuries of knowledge, sharpened by pain, and driven by a desire that could not be quenched. The aliens had underestimated humans once, and they would pay for it again. Humans did not forgive, they did not forget, and with the power of their long memory, the hunt had only just begun. The humans' return was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Not a roar of fleets or a sudden invasion, but a steady, calculated reappearance that struck fear into every corner of space, because after years of rebuilding, learning, and remembering, humanity was no longer just survivors. They were hunters, predators forged from loss, pain, and vengeance, and the alien empires felt the weight of that power long before a single weapon was fired. The prisoner remembered the first signs, subtle at first, whispers of missing patrols, colonies going dark, supply lines disrupted, but nothing that could immediately identify the humans as the cause. Nothing that could warn the Empire that the hunters had returned. Yet as each incident accumulated, patterns began to emerge, patterns that revealed a terrifying intelligence behind every strike, an understanding of alien strategies, technology, and weaknesses so precise it was impossible to ignore. Even the most confident commanders began to doubt, realizing that the humans' patience had been spent not on despair, but on preparation, and that the hunter they thought defeated had grown stronger, sharper, and more lethal than ever before. B. First major engagement of the deadly return occurred in the outer colonies of the Varik system, a strategic hub of resources and military presence that the Empire had considered secure. The prisoner recalled the fear that swept through the council chambers when news arrived that the colonies had been decimated almost overnight. Not a single human fleet was detected approaching, no distress signals intercepted, and yet when satellites were reactivated, the stations were gone, replaced by drifting debris, scorched remnants, and the unmistakable marks of human weapons. Alien commanders initially refused to believe it, blaming sabotage, accidents, or unknown pirates. But as more colonies suffered similar fates, the truth became undeniable. Humanity had returned, and the return was deadly, precise, and unstoppable. Humans did not announce themselves with grandiose declarations or demands. They did not require recognition, treaties, or negotiations. They operated like shadows, silent but omnipresent, striking only when the enemy was most vulnerable. The prisoner spoke of fleets that vanished without a trace, of entire starports being destroyed while nearby systems remained untouched, of alien soldiers encountering human ships and barely escaping with their lives. The humans remembered every tactic used against them in past wars, every weakness of alien technology, every flaw in fleet formations, and they exploited these lessons to devastating effect. Each strike carried not just physical destruction, but psychological terror, because the enemy could not predict where the humans would appear next, how many ships they would bring, or which system would be targeted. The deadly return was not a war in the conventional sense. It was a hunt, methodical, patient, and horrifying in its execution. The prisoner recalled stories told by alien survivors, tales that spread like wildfire through the Empire and magnified the fear. One fleet commander reported pursuing a human squadron only to find themselves lured into a trap, with hidden human ships appearing from impossible angles, destroying the fleet with surgical precision. Another governor of a mining colony recounted waking to alarms, only to discover that every defensive turret had been sabotaged silently, every communication line cut, and when the humans attacked, there was no escape. The aliens began to understand that humanity's return was not fueled by emotion alone, but by centuries of memory, learning, and strategic adaptation. The humans remembered every battle, every loss, and every injustice, and they used that knowledge as a weapon to exact vengeance on a galactic scale. Even within the highest councils of the alien empires, fear had begun to replace strategy. The prisoner remembered observing how leaders, who once boasted of invincibility, now argued over minor tactical details, unsure of whether their fleets could survive even a single encounter. No one knew where the humans would strike next, how powerful their forces had grown, or what new strategies they might employ. Rumors spread that humans had developed technologies scavenged and adapted from alien fleets, making their ships faster, deadlier, and more unpredictable than before. The prisoner noted the irony that the Empire's own weapons were turned against them, repurposed by the memory-driven ingenuity of a species that refused to die quietly, that refused to surrender, and that refused to forgive. The human hunt was not limited to military targets alone. The prisoner explained how resource hubs, supply stations, and even lightly defended colonies became targets if they had ever played a role in past conflicts. The humans studied every record, every mission log, every historical detail of their oppressors' activities, ensuring that no act of aggression went unpunished. Aliens began to live in constant vigilance, never certain if they were next, and that uncertainty became a form of psychological warfare more effective than any weapon. The deadly return was as much about instilling fear as it was about reclaiming territory, reminding the galaxy that humans were no longer victims, but hunters who measured time in decades, patience in centuries, and vengeance in the absolute certainty of memory. The prisoner described a particular event that became a turning point for many empires: the fall of the Zyran defense ring. A massive installation that had repelled countless attacks now lay in ruins, destroyed by a small human strike team whose ships had slipped through sensors undetected, using alien technology against its creators. Entire fleets were immobilized, stations burned, and survivors spoke of human tactics that exploited centuries of historical knowledge. It was then that alien leaders began to accept that humans had transcended conventional warfare. They had become legends, shadows moving through space, and forces whose return would not be halted until justice, as they defined it, was satisfied. The prisoner's eyes darkened as he recounted how even alien spies began to fear capturing humans because humans were not easily intimidated, and any failed attempt to learn their secrets often led to devastating consequences. The human's memory was not just of battlefields, but of every betrayal, every deception, every minor slight, and the prisoner emphasized that this collective memory guided every decision, every ambush, and every fleet movement. Unlike alien species, humans could wait, plan, and execute across generations, turning even the smallest acts of vengeance into catastrophic blows to their enemies. The deadly return was therefore unstoppable not merely because of firepower, but because it was informed by centuries of meticulous remembrance, planning, and inexorable patience. And so, the galaxy changed under the shadow of humanity's return. Colonies fortified themselves more than ever, fleets traveled cautiously, communication lines were encrypted and monitored, yet fear persisted because humans were patient, adaptable, and never forgiving. Every empire that had once mocked or attacked humanity now whispered their name in dread, knowing that the hunters were out there, watching, waiting, and returning stronger than ever. The prisoner's final words resonated with absolute certainty. Humanity had returned not as survivors, not as victims, but as predators born of fire, memory, and vengeance, and the deadly return had only begun, a hunt that would continue until every wrong had been accounted for, until every scar had been avenged, and until the galaxy itself remembered that humans do not forgive, they do not forget, and they never, ever stop hunting. The human's vengeance spread across the galaxy like a shadow, silent, relentless, and unstoppable. For after years of patience, preparation, and careful observation, every strike they carried out was deliberate, every move calculated, and every empire that had wronged them felt the weight of centuries of memory and suffering. And the prisoner recalled how alien leaders whispered among themselves, afraid to even speak aloud the name of the hunters, knowing that humans did not forgive, did not forget, and that the shadow of vengeance could appear anywhere without warning. The first signs came as small, almost imperceptible disruptions. Supply convoys disappearing along routine routes, outposts reporting strange anomalies in communications, patrol fleets failing to return. But each incident added to the growing dread, because the Empire began to realize that these were not accidents or failures, they were warnings. the opening movements of a hunt that would consume everything in its path if ignored. Colonies that had once felt secure under alien protection now fortified their defenses, yet the humans always found a way past sensors, shields, and patrols, striking at the weak points that no one had thought to defend. The prisoner spoke of entire systems being crippled not through brute force, but through careful sabotage. Strikes at energy hubs, navigation arrays, and supply lines, leaving fleets stranded and defenses useless. It was not only destruction, it was theater, a psychological weapon that instilled fear across every alien outpost. Soldiers reported seeing human ships moving silently like shadows across the void, attacking without warning, disappearing without trace, leaving panic and confusion in their wake. Commanders tried to adapt, to predict their movements, to anticipate the next strike, but every time they thought they had a pattern, the humans changed tactics, adapted, and struck in new and unpredictable ways, proving again that their long memory was not only of the past, but of every lesson learned in each encounter. The shadow of vengeance was a living force, growing with each victory, fed by centuries of remembered wrongs, and it consumed the alien mind as surely as it did their colonies and fleets. The prisoner remembered the council discussions, where alien leaders argued endlessly, desperate to find a solution, yet paralyzed by fear and uncertainty. Some suggested preemptive strikes, others proposed diplomacy, and some even considered surrender, but each plan fell short. The humans were not seeking negotiation or compromise. They were seeking justice on their terms, guided by memory, experience, and patience beyond comprehension. Reports came of human strike teams infiltrating fortified bases, dismantling defenses from within, and escaping without casualties, leaving only destruction and a lingering sense of dread. Entire fleets vanished because their own technology had been turned against them, scavenged and improved by human engineers who understood alien systems in ways that defied belief. No empire had faced a force like this. No fleet could match the combination of patience, memory, and precision that humans had perfected over decades, and the prisoner could see how hopelessness spread through every command chamber, every colony, every soldier who had once thought they were safe. The prisoner recounted how humans targeted more than just military forces. They struck at the very infrastructure of their enemies, crippling economies, cutting supply lines, and isolating colonies. Alien leaders watched helplessly as trade hubs, mining stations, and communication satellites were destroyed or captured, each act a reminder that humans remembered every slight, every injustice, every act that had once been committed against them or their world. Even spies and intelligence networks were not safe because humans had anticipated methods of detection, infiltration, and analysis, and they countered these with unmatched ingenuity. It was not only skill, but memory, a living map of every interaction, every tactic, every failure, all stored and all deployed with precision. The shadow of vengeance was not temporary, it was permanent. A constant presence that haunted the galaxy, forcing empires to rethink strategies and live under the ever-present fear of human retribution. The prisoner remembered a particularly harrowing example. A remote colony that had once served as a military staging point for attacks on human survivors. The humans did not strike immediately. They waited years, observing every patrol route, every supply shipment, every command decision, until the perfect moment arrived. When they finally attacked, the fleet sent to reinforce the colony was destroyed en route. The colony itself fell quickly, and survivors described a level of coordination that seemed almost supernatural. Ships moved as if guided by one mind. Every action planned decades in advance, every strike informed by past experiences and failures of the enemy. The aliens began to speak of humans not as enemies, but as legends, shadows that could not be contained, forces that turned history itself into a weapon, and the prisoner noted how fear had become more powerful than fleets, more effective than any weapon in their arsenals. Even the bravest alien soldiers began to hesitate before engaging humans, and commanders grew cautious to the point of indecision. The shadow of vengeance had taught them that no action could be taken lightly, that every mistake would be remembered, and that every loss would be exploited in future encounters. Across star systems, whispers of human attacks spread faster than fleets reaching colonies before human ships ever arrived, and each story added to the growing legend, reinforcing the fear and uncertainty that humans wielded as effectively as any laser or missile. Humans had turned patience, memory, and strategy into a weapon, and the prisoner observed how alien cultures, once proud and confident, now quivered under the knowledge that the hunters were always watching, always waiting, and always returning. The prisoner's voice grew solemn as he described the impact on alien society. Entire civilizations adjusted their lives around the threat of human vengeance. Trade routes were rerouted, fleets doubled in size but moved cautiously, colonies invested more in defense than in growth, and every decision was weighed against the possibility of human intervention. The hunters' shadow shaped politics, commerce, and war, and no leader could act without considering how the humans might respond. Children grew up learning the fear of humans, soldiers trained under the assumption that every engagement might be their last, and even scholars who believed in knowledge above all recognized that the humans' long memory and methodical vengeance had rewritten the rules of survival across the galaxy, and so the prisoner concluded with a warning, a reminder that echoed through every cell, every star system, every council chamber. The shadow of vengeance was not fleeting, it was eternal. Humans did not forgive, they did not forget, and they never stopped hunting. Every wrong committed against them, every act of cruelty or conquest, became fuel for the hunt, and every strike carried the weight of centuries. Aliens who believed themselves safe soon learned that there was no safety, no peace, and no escape. The humans' return was not just about power or revenge, it was a reckoning, a reminder that the galaxy would remember, and that the hunter's shadow stretched across the stars, waiting patiently, striking without mercy, and leaving only fear in its wake. The humans' legacy was no longer measured in fleets, colonies, or technology, but in the fear and respect they commanded across the galaxy, for every empire that had once dismissed them now understood that their existence had altered the rules of war, diplomacy, and survival forever. And the prisoner remembered how even the youngest alien soldiers spoke in hushed tones of the humans as if they were ghosts, legends, and unstoppable hunters all at once. The legacy began with the survivors themselves, scattered across star systems, small in number but vast in knowledge, each carrying the memory of every injustice, every loss, and every triumph of their ancestors, ensuring that no wrong would go unpunished and no lesson would be forgotten. Colonies rebuilt not simply to survive, but to prepare, to strategize, and to serve as nodes in a network of intelligence, training, and coordination that spanned the galaxy. Every ship that was launched, every fleet that moved, and every strike that was carried out reflected decades, even centuries of accumulated knowledge, creating a force that was small but infinitely more dangerous than anything the aliens had encountered. The prisoner recounted how humans turned every encounter into a teaching moment for the next generation, passing down strategies, lessons, and warnings through oral histories, simulations, and recorded experiences. Even children understood the importance of memory, the weight of vengeance, and the inevitability of the hunt. They learned that patience could be more deadly than speed, that observation was a weapon as powerful as any laser, and that the smallest oversight by their enemies could be exploited to devastating effect. The alien empires had assumed that time would erode human anger, that generations would forget old wounds, but they had been catastrophically wrong. Humans remembered everything, and every memory became a tool to shape the next strike, the next hunt, the next chapter in a legacy that was impossible to ignore. The prisoner described the spread of human influence not through conquest, but through intelligence and strategy, embedding themselves into the fabric of galactic politics, trade, and military planning without ever being fully visible. Colonies that had been abandoned, worlds thought lost, became hidden bases and staging areas, their locations known only to humans and those they trusted. Fleets moved silently, using deception, feints, and misdirection, exploiting weaknesses in alien coordination that had been learned from previous encounters. The legacy was not one of brute force, but of foresight, patience, and cunning, and the prisoner explained how even the most powerful alien empires began to adjust every decision, based on what humans might remember, what humans might anticipate, and how humans might respond. Every wrong done to humans was forever marked in their memory, and every victory over them was temporary, because humans adapted, improved, and returned stronger than before. The prisoner remembered a council debate where alien leaders struggled to understand how a species that had once been considered weak could now dictate the terms of survival across entire star systems. Scholars argued over tactics, engineers studied human ships, and strategists tried to predict their moves, yet no analysis could fully explain the humans' deadly efficiency. Humans were not merely fighting battles, they were reshaping the galaxy. According to a principle as old as their suffering, do not forgive, do not forget, and always hunt. Every act of aggression against humanity, every betrayal, every colony lost became part of a web of knowledge that informed each subsequent encounter. The aliens slowly realized that human legacy was not something that could be fought with fleets or treaties. It was a living force, growing stronger with every act of remembrance and vengeance. The prisoner recounted stories of fleets sent to intercept human movements, only to be ambushed, misled, or destroyed by tactics learned from previous engagements. Each encounter served as both a lesson and a warning to future generations, and humans used every victory to train the next wave of hunters. Colonies that had survived attacks became centers of instruction, teaching strategy, survival, and the importance of remembering past wrongs. It was not just a military legacy, it was cultural, psychological, and strategic, ensuring that no human generation would ever be caught unprepared. The alien empires could rebuild fleets, they could erect walls, they could launch campaigns, but they could not erase the memory, skill, and patience that humans passed down from one generation to the next. Even alien intelligence networks began to fear the humans' ability to anticipate their actions. The prisoner described spies who returned with reports of human movements that seemed impossible to predict, of strikes that exploited weaknesses long thought repaired, and of tactics that turned past mistakes into future victories. Every misstep, every oversight, every failure was stored in the collective memory of humanity and deployed with ruthless efficiency. The hunter's legacy, the prisoner emphasized, was not in destruction alone, but in the certainty that humans would always learn, adapt, and return stronger. The galaxy had become a chessboard, and humans remembered every move, every counter, and every blunder, ensuring that no empire could claim superiority for long. The prisoner also noted how human legacy inspired fear not only in military minds, but across all alien societies. Merchants rerouted trade fearing ambush, governors reinforced infrastructure in anticipation of attacks, and even civilians learned caution. For the humans' memory and patience meant that anyone who had wronged them could eventually face the consequences. The legacy was psychological as much as physical. It was a shadow stretching across the stars, a reminder that actions had consequences, and that humans' memory was eternal. The hunter's shadow became a guiding principle, a cautionary tale, and a living reality that affected every aspect of galactic life. The prisoner's recounting grew darker as he described the perfection of human tactics over time. They combined historical knowledge with real-time observation, turning past defeats into opportunities and learning from every encounter to improve strategy, coordination, and execution. Colonies became self-sufficient, fleets moved in synchrony, and command structures adapted to ensure that human memory and patience were always leveraged for maximum effect. aliens came to recognize that even when humans appeared weak, they were far more dangerous than any visible fleet, because the hunter's legacy included preparation for decades, even centuries, ensuring that every strike was precise, calculated, and inescapable. In the prisoner's eyes, the most terrifying aspect of the human's legacy was its inevitability. Time did not weaken them, it strengthened them. Losses did not demoralize them, they trained them. Memory was not a burden. It was the source of their strength, guiding every decision, every fleet movement, and every strike. The galaxy could not hope to outrun it, to outgun it, or to outwit it, because humans had already learned, remembered, and prepared for every contingency. The prisoner concluded that the human's legacy was permanent, a force that would shape galactic history for generations to come, ensuring that the hunter's shadow would never fade, that vengeance would never cease, and that the principle of remembering and not forgiving would remain the most powerful weapon in the universe. The final reckoning arrived not with the blare of alarms or the flash of lasers, but with a calm, terrifying inevitability, because after decades of patient preparation, careful observation, and the relentless pursuit of justice, humans had positioned themselves across the galaxy like pieces on a board, each move deliberate, each strike calculated, each target selected with the memory of centuries guiding them, and the prisoner remembered the fear that spread through alien empires as they realized that nothing could stop what was coming. The humans did not rush, they did not panic, they did not announce their arrival. They moved like shadows, invisible and inevitable, striking first where the enemy was weakest, hitting hardest where vengeance had been long delayed, and leaving no escape for those who had once believed themselves untouchable. Entire fleets vanished in hours, stations burned without warning, and colonies that had grown complacent suddenly found themselves under siege, as if the galaxy itself were being reshaped by a force older than time, sharper than any weapon, and guided by the unbreakable principle that humans do not forgive, they do not forget, and they always hunt. The prisoner recalled how alien leaders convened frantically, trying to form strategies, alliances, and defenses, but all plans failed against the humans' foresight and patience. Every move the aliens made had already been anticipated, every weakness identified, every possible counterattack accounted for, because humans had learned, remembered, and prepared for generations. Fleets that were once considered invincible were destroyed not only by superior tactics, but by a deep understanding of the enemy's history, habits, and errors. Supply lines were severed, reinforcements trapped, and communications infiltrated, leaving empires paralyzed with fear as humans moved with a precision and inevitability that no alien mind had imagined possible. The final reckoning was not merely a war. It was a judgment, a reckoning, and a demonstration of the power of memory, patience, and vengeance perfected over centuries. The prisoner described how humans coordinated attacks across multiple systems simultaneously, creating chaos that alien commanders could not comprehend or counter. While fleets scrambled to respond, humans struck at critical infrastructure, power grids disabled, navigation hubs destroyed, military depots sabotaged, and entire colonies cut off from support. The humans did not need overwhelming numbers. Their strength lay in strategy, preparation, and the knowledge carried from every past defeat and victory. Each strike was surgical, each move informed by history, and each engagement ensured that the enemy learned nothing but fear and loss. Stories spread of alien fleets being lured into traps that mirrored mistakes they had made decades before, proving that humans had remembered every wrong, every oversight, every failure, and were using it now to exact justice. The final reckoning was absolute, and the prisoner could see how alien societies crumbled under the weight of the humans' unyielding resolve. He remembered the fall of the Andaris fleet, a force once celebrated for its strength and cunning. The humans studied the fleet's history, its battles, and even its commander's personal strategies, then executed a plan that left no survivors. Ships were trapped in asteroid fields where humans had anticipated evasive maneuvers, defenses, neutralized by knowledge of shield frequencies and energy patterns, and every escape route cut off by ships moving silently like shadows in the void. Alien survivors described the humans as unstoppable, their movements almost prescient, and their victory complete, not because of sheer power, but because every action was informed by memory, patience, and vengeance. The prisoner noted how alien morale collapsed as news spread. No fleet, no colony, no empire could withstand a species that remembered everything and struck with perfect precision. The humans' final reckoning extended beyond military targets, political centers, research, stations, and even cultural archives that had once been safe were systematically dismantled or neutralized. The prisoner recalled how humans used psychological warfare as effectively as physical destruction, sending messages that recounted past wrongs, showing aliens the consequences of their actions, ensuring that fear became a permanent part of galactic life. Colonies that had once been complacent now learned caution, leaders acted in terror, and every decision was weighed against the possibility of human retaliation. Humans did not need to conquer. They only needed to remind the galaxy that, the hunters had returned. That memory was their weapon, and that vengeance was inevitable. The final reckoning was as much a lesson as it was a battle, a demonstration of the consequences of underestimating the relentless force of a species that refused to forgive. The prisoner's voice grew somber as he recounted how humans executed their plans with discipline and precision, using deception, feints, and misdirection to confuse the enemy. Fleets were drawn into traps, colonies evacuated unknowingly, and resources destroyed systematically. Alien leaders were forced to make impossible choices, defend one system while another was taken, risk lives to protect supplies, or retreat in shame and fear. Every action the aliens took had been anticipated, every weakness exploited, and every error remembered for future use. The final reckoning was comprehensive, leaving no corner of the galaxy untouched by the humans' patient and terrifying strategy. Even the youngest humans played a role, trained in tactics, observation, and the history of every empire, ensuring that the hunt would continue for generations. The prisoner described how children learned not only to fight but to remember, to anticipate, to plan, and to execute with precision, reinforcing the idea that the final reckoning was not a single event but a continuous process that would shape the galaxy forever. Every victory, every lesson, and every remembered wrong was passed down, ensuring that no empire would ever feel safe again. Alien species who thought humans could be defeated learned, often too late, that memory itself was the most dangerous weapon, and that patience combined with vengeance was unstoppable. The prisoner also recounted tales of alliances collapsing under the pressure of human attacks. Species that had never trusted each other found themselves betrayed, divided, or destroyed, as humans anticipated both the strengths and weaknesses of interstellar coalitions. They turned history into strategy, mistakes into traps, and fear into a weapon. Every empire learned that survival required humility, caution, and respect for the human's long memory. Yet even these measures were often insufficient, for the final reckoning was not about speed or strength, but about patience, strategy, and the certainty of vengeance. In the final moments, the prisoner described the utter silence that followed some battles, when entire fleets vanished, colonies burned, and the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Humans did not celebrate. They did not gloat. They moved on, leaving only the memory of their presence, a lesson engraved in the minds of every alien who had witnessed it. Their final reckoning was complete, not because every enemy was destroyed, but because the galaxy had been shown the truth. Humans do not forgive, they do not forget, and they will always hunt. The prisoner's eyes darkened as he explained that the final reckoning was eternal, that no empire could escape the consequences of past wrongs, and that the hunter's shadow would forever loom over the stars. And so, the prisoner concluded, the humans return. Their long memory, their methodical vengeance, and their final reckoning ensured that the galaxy would never again underestimate them. Empires crumbled, fleets vanished, and colonies were destroyed, but the true power of humanity lay in the certainty of remembrance, the patience of hunters, and the unyielding principle that nothing goes forgotten. The final reckoning was not an end. It was a warning, a lesson, and a living proof that the humans had rewritten the rules of the galaxy. Those who wrong them will be hunted, remembered, and ultimately brought to justice. For humans do not forgive, they do not forget, and they never ever stop hunting.